Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to go over the change logs of the last few days and also obviously the BR changes that came in. Luckily there weren't any new BR changes compared to what we had before, so we don't have to have a look at them in a new video, but they have been implemented into the game. So if there are any vehicles that you're interested in playing now that they're different BR, might be worth giving them a chance. Also, it is Guardian's turn to celebrate Bastille Day. Basically, Bastille Day, if you don't know what it is, it's when the French revolutionaries stormed the Bastille fortress and marked a major turning point in the French Revolution in 1789. And because of Bastille Day, they're actually doing a decal called the Heart of France for the French nation in War Thunder. And from the 14th of July to the 17th of July, all you have to do is participate in 3 battles while using French combat vehicles of rank 2 and above, and with an activity of 60% or higher to receive the special Heart of France decal. So just play a few battles with France. You know, that I believe there's an authentic decal which goes along with France right now for 2000s. Maybe you can incorporate it into that and have a little bit of fun. But also, it's always nice to do these little events while they're here. Anyway, let's get into the changelogs. So we'll start with the server updates on the 13th, which was of course yesterday from the publication of this video, and the BR changes were implemented into the game. Now, early thoughts when it comes to BR changes. I was playing the Scimitar F Mark I yesterday. Obviously the MiG-21F got moved down, and also the PFM. Saw a few of them around the place. I didn't see the MiG-21Fs doing that much, but the PFMs definitely had a bit of an impact on the games. We're going to have to see how it goes. You know, obviously the Simi is probably not the best matchup versus the MiG-21. MiG-21 basically does everything better than the Simi, apart from armament, so that's a bit of an issue. But we'll have to see as it goes forward how those vehicles do. I might give the F a go. We'll see. It's obviously very limited on armament, which isn't very fun, but oh well. The initial thoughts so far, not a huge change compared to what we had before. The next set of things were a bunch of changes to vehicles, which either changed their BR straight away, such as the HSTVL, or may actually change their BRs going forward. So the HSTVL, the operation of the autoloader has been specified. Previously it could shoot 6 rounds before it had to be reloaded. Now the autoloader allows the shooting of all ammunition with no reload required. So pretty much what that means is the HSTVL can fire all of its ammunition at the ridiculous reload that it has, which is fine because it went up in BR to 10.3. Generally, I don't think this will actually change that much with the HSTVL. I think using it as a passive scout, which annihilates stuff in the side, was always the way to play it anyway, and there's not really that many positions where you need more than 6 rounds to be able to do that type of playstyle. The main bonus of the HSTVL is you can literally go hull down in it against APF-SDS because of the fact that APF-SDS doesn't overpressure you, and the gunner and the driver sit in the hull of the vehicle. So it's an incredibly survivable vehicle, especially as a scout, and it's one of those which I think that will benefit it way more than the reload change. I think a lot of people are going to be annoyed with the HSTVL because of the fact that its gun doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, and now it's going to go against better armor over and over and over again. It's going to be a bit of a pain. I personally think I would have preferred the version before 9.7, but we'll see how it goes at 10.3. Leopard 2A5 and 2PL, they changed their rounds. The DM33 round has been replaced by DM43, and the DM23 round has been replaced with the DM33. So basically, they've moved the DM33 to rank 1, and they put the DM43 into the game at rank 4. This obviously makes both vehicles more powerful. The DM33 was already good enough to be very, very useful. I don't really understand why these things needed new rounds. I don't like this trend that we've been seeing over the last year, where pretty much just add better rounds to everything. It doesn't, it's something that's happened with the Soviets to try and improve them. Now, because the Soviets have improved with the addition of the T-80 BVM, now we have to improve the Germans. Obviously, they improved the Americans before with the M1A2 round, and then also some of the other machines in the game, like the Challengers. So pretty much just over time, different things are just getting better ammunition, and it's going to make armor a little bit more useless. But then again, the weak spots of vehicles at top tier haven't changed in a very long time. Basically, against Soviet vehicles or Russian vehicles and Chinese, you just hit driver ports, low glacis, and cannon breach, and then against NATO MBTs, low glacis and cannon breach and turret ring. They're pretty much all the same when it comes to it. There's a few key differences with a few vehicles like the Ariete, but that's really about it. The Leopard 2K, they added the DM23 round to it. I talked about with the 2A5 and the 2PL, I don't think they needed the new rounds, and I don't think they did. But when it comes to the 2K, the simple solution, because they've tried to move it down in BR like 2 times now, and I'm guessing it's because it's underperforming, but at least when I played it, I had a great time with it. The simple solution for it was to just add a better round to it. The DM13 is not a round which works well, especially against stuff like ERA. And what I mean by that is a lot of Soviet ERA, like Contact 5 and Relict and stuff like that, it's designed to not just be good against chemical, it's also designed to have a kinetic stoppage component to it as well. And the DM13, this meant once it penetrates through that and then tries to penetrate after that, it wouldn't really do a lot. It would get stuck on stuff like fuel tanks. It wouldn't penetrate through like a DM33 round would. So for me, adding the DM23 to the 2K, this gives it a new lease of life. And it also means that you can now run it more efficiently with the Leopard 2A4, which is slightly higher BR than it. The Jagdpanzer 4.5, they changed its APCR default shell to the Hesh round, so at the BR that it's at, this is going to be much better for it. I wish we would stop playing these games with stock ammunition and just give it Heats FS, which is its actual useful round. I'm very sick of these games. As a person who has stock grinded nearly every vehicle in the game at this point, at least pretty much every vehicle from rank 1 to 5, the stock round experience of many vehicles is trash, and giving something a Hesh round instead of just giving it its heat round, which of course is its best round, just do that. Like, I understand you want to have a progression through the modifications of stuff. It is incredibly frustrating having a tank destroyer which can't kill tanks, and the Hesh round, Hesh is one of those things which is so RNG when it comes to how it works, and they seem to change Hesh a lot depending on the patch. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it has weird ricochets. There's so much stuff with it, but at least it's better than APCR. The Challenger 2, they've moved the L26 round to rank 1 modifications, and they've added the L27A1 round to the rank 4 modifications, so once again improving the penetration of the gun and probably the post-pen damage as well. Everything at top tier has crazy rounds now. The Challenger Mark 3 and Vickers Mark 7 get the L26 round. This is because they were moved up to 10.0, and they're going to have to deal with extra armor. This is fine, it just means that now you have a 9.7 lineup for Britain and now a 10.01. The 9.7 lineup was incredibly strong for Britain. It was always overlooked. I don't know why. Probably because people went, oh, Challengers, slow. But they're not that slow, and they're incredibly good hull down. And the Vickers gives you the mobility required, depending on the maps that you play. The Centauro 105, they obviously gave it the APF SDS and moved it up to 8.7. We've talked about that before. I think it's a fine change. the XM1C and XM1GM, the turret protection against APF-SDS rounds has been improved, provided protection against 115mm 3BM4 rounds along the course of an arc of 60 degrees at 1,000 meters. So we're going to have to see how this affects the XM1s. I've talked about this in the past. A lot of the premium vehicles are criminally under-tiered at high BRs. The XM1s should be a higher BR. The Leopard L44 should be a higher BR. The AMX30 Super should also be a higher BR. It's just one of those things where you have these vehicles which, I don't know, they just never go up in BR. And I feel like the XM1s with this change, more survivability added to them, maybe that'll finally happen. The Elephant Mark II turret protection against shape-charged rounds has been improved, provided protection against chemical rounds of calibers 100-105mm along the course of arc of 60 degrees. That's nice, but you never see chemical rounds against an Elephant Mark II. You know, if you're seeing chemical rounds, that just means the person doesn't have the correct rounds loaded, and, you should be able to beat them anyway. The only protection that really matters at high echelons at the moment is kinetic protection, apart from against stuff like AGMs, but I don't know if this turret protection will protect from that. The TAM2IP, turret protection against shape charge rounds, has been specified, provided partial protection against chemical rounds of calibers 90 to 100 in the front. I suppose this affects the TAM2IP more than it does the Elephant Mark II, because if you want to like overpressure something like a TAM, you're going to have to fire like chemical rounds at it, but I still don't think it's going to make any difference. Everybody fires APF-SDS, so the chemical protection of really anything is either somebody is memeing with heat, like Soviet heat, or somebody doesn't have their full configuration ready yet. And they've made it much easier nowadays to be able to get APF-SDS. It still should, be easier, but at least now there's a lot more people running around with it. The respawn points cost for helicopters with powerful and guided rockets, the S-13, S-24 and ground RB has been changed. Basic 227, RP minimal is 182. This is nice to see. It obviously shows that there was an issue when it came to the Mi-28s and the Ka-50s and Ka-52s, even though somehow Gaijin believe that the AH Mark I or the AH-1 is the best helicopter performing in the game right now. It is very obvious that there was a problem with the Mi-28s and the Ka-50s, not just because they were very powerful, but because no other nation was able to do this. So therefore you have an imbalance between the nations. It's nice to see it addressed. The MiG-23M and MiG-21 BIS, as a balance change, the R-13M missile has been replaced with the more advanced R-13M1, with a higher angular targeting tracking speed, increased target acquisition range, and is also less sensitive to countermeasures. Interesting. So the R-13M1 comes in for this vehicle and for these two vehicles. I feel like the wonderful, it's a semi-active radar homing missile, so it's similar to stuff like the AIM-7s. It's just a better version of the standard R-13M, which we have. Oh well, yeah, I suppose we do. It's kind of funny with the MiG-23 because it came into the game, and I remember whenever we talked about it, like talking with Rocker about it, who's pretty much a plane aficionado, talking to like Alex or many others about it. If you actually look into the history of the MiG-23, it's not very promising. It has general issues with it, and not a very great time. Seeing it match up against the Phantom, and especially the F5 in a meta which is very fast and very beehivey, where everybody goes around the honeypot in the center of the battle, the MiG-23 was never really going to do well. And guess what? I don't think it's done very well. The MiG-21 BIS is still a very capable aircraft, though, and fits the meta pretty well. And also R-60s are still quite strong. So we'll have to see how that changes stuff going forward. The MiG-23M, the presets for the two R-13M1 supplemented by two R-23Rs and R-23Ts have been added. Well, that's nice. You'll be able to take all the armaments that you want. The R-3S missile the target capture field has been reduced from 4 to 3.5 degrees, and the maximum angular velocity of target tracking has been reduced from 11 to 6 per according to basic data on the R3S missile from the pilot's operation manual for MiG fighter aircraft. So the R3S has got quite a large nerf there. It's definitely not going to be as good as what we've seen before in the past. It still wasn't very good already in the game, and now it's just got worse. Oh dear. There is a lot of missiles in the game which, for example, like the AIM-9Bs, which you see a lot around like 879093, they're not good missiles. Like they pretty much they either catch people off guard when they're not paying attention, so that's like a good way of killing people with them, or if they're at like the top of their loop and low energy, or they're like damaged and going very slow. Those are like the three areas where they're good. Everywhere else, you pretty much just use them to get the person to slow down and go from there. Same with like stuff like the R3S. But it is nice to see that they are, they are modifying a lot of vehicles. We'll have to see how that screws with the balance of the game. I'm sure it'll screw with it royally, and we'll have some conversations in the future about those facts. Update 2.7.0.118 also came out today on the publishing of this video, and they added a bunch of stuff. They even had an It's Fixed article with it. I definitely say it's worth having a look at the It's Fixed articles, but at the same time, if you want the broader context, it's always nice to go to the changelog as well. I'll leave the link in the description for the changelog. So the first part is the improvements and fixes. The first area of that is turn dynamics in first gear in AB has been improved. There's now no switching to neutral with the speed drop. So now this should make the movement way more fluid going around in these areas. Crew lock mechanics when leaving a ground RB battle in an aircraft have also been changed. Now to determine the possibility of respawn in a vehicle, the last selected armament and ammunition in the hangar or during the previous respawn are used, rather than the basic cost of the vehicle. This also fixes a bug where the crew was blocked for leaving a battle early in aircraft without basic weapons. So for example, with some helicopters and with the Civics and FAW Mark II, and also pretty much anything else that had secondary ordnance in the game. This used to happen quite a lot. You get crew locked because of it. So this is just going to be based on the last selected armament and ammunition in the hangar or during the previous respawn. So it might be worth, before you go into a battle, selecting the armaments that you want in the game. I think that would be a really decent idea. Added a hint in the interface when changing the rate of fire for the helicopter's automatic cannon. So that is quite nice. Always good to get a bit of quality and life improvements. Toggling of NVD mode in binoculars now switches the camera to the commander's sight with night vision on. So once again, it just means that you don't have to click a button twice instead of once. So that's always nice to see. I still don't really see the use in the commander's mode yet. I think in the future, when they give it like scouting and maybe a little bit more movement, then it may have a little bit more of a use, but at least right now I still stick with the binos and the gunner sight unless I'm in a night battle, and then I just kind of use the flares and go from there if I need to. The next one is a bug has been fixed that disabled selected weapon controls after consequent toggling of the binocular button, night mode vision button, and gunner's view camera. So if you're quick switching between those, it would disable your selected weapons controls. That is rough, because you get ready for a fight and then you realize that you can't do anything. That one would be definitely awful. A bug has been fixed that prevents the aiming block while using separate brake controls with the block vertical aiming while braking function enabled. So this has something to do with how the brakings work. I don't entirely understand what that's talking about, but that could just be me being naive. Probably is. The STRVs, so the 103s, the Premium, the Zero, the A, and the C, the hull aiming has been completely reworked. The new aiming system, with different control of the gears and the torque of the tracks, increases the accuracy and the quality Vehicle's positioning in space allows you to compensate for rollback when aiming on slopes. So, now we're going to have to see how this actually works. Because of the fact that when it comes to the STRV, they pretty much sorted it out apart from one key problem, and that key problem was slopes for the STRV. What would happen is if you shimmied on a slope, it would either shimmy you down or shimmy you, up a slope, depending on where you were looking and what you were doing. And this would mean that aiming was impossible because you were constantly mobile and not able to sit still. Now, I worked around a lot of the 103's issues when I played it. Basically, I realized when you're on decently flat ground, if you just give the engine a bit of a push, like just accelerate a little bit, then you could get the gun on a pretty accurate target very quickly. And the only way this didn't work was when you're on a slope. So I'm really happy to see this come in. We're going to have to test it to see if it actually works, because that's always a problem, right? Whether it works or not, and hopefully it does. The VT-12, the hull aiming at low angles has been improved, so that's really nice. Good to see that happening once again. The location of key points in naval missions has been changed for locations of Denmark, La Manche, Jungle, Midway, and New Guinea. Airfields have been moved in order to reduce the time of approach and reloading of aviation. So it looks like what they were talking about in the dev Q&A yesterday with naval airfields on certain maps not being available, looks like they're already starting the process of moving around maps and moving around airfields on maps, and also, adding airfields to other ones. Fix a crash that sometimes happen from the main menu when opening the friends or chats list. That's kind of interesting. I didn't have a crash, but I have had a lot of bugs with the messaging stuff in War Thunder the last few days, or the last few weeks, I should say. Just very odd things, like it looking like I was sending messages to myself. That was one of the issues. And then also it just appearing in game. I actually had one of the weirdest bugs I've ever seen yesterday in War Thunder. Basically, when I started streaming, I went into the test drive and then it stuck me in the pause menu and I couldn't actually get into the test drive. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just a little bug. And then I tried to go into a match and it also got stuck in that screen. So I was just stuck in the pause screen and couldn't actually play the game. It was very odd. I was on the work in progress client though. I do run the work in progress client, just to let you guys know. So maybe that was the issue there. Once I switched it and went to the normal client, it wasn't an issue. But if you do have issues with that bug going forward, make sure to report it because it is literally game breaking. Then we had some ground vehicle model changes and weaponry changes. So a bug has been fixed which resulted in incorrect values of armor penetration at different angles for the info cards on the AP rounds. So now, once again, the DEMAR formula is being put into effect. Hopefully that means that it's in a good place and everything makes sense. A bug has been fixed with shell behavior after penetration of armor that in rare cases prevented damage to the crew after a direct hit from APCR and APFSDS rounds. This, I think this is referencing when you penetrate like a tank and the APFSDS will get stuck on like a it will get stuck on like a fuel tank, or it will get stuck on a radiator and not go through, or that's at least what it looked like, but actually it was going through, it just wasn't doing any damage to anything behind it. So hopefully that's fixed, because that's really annoying, especially on lighter vehicles, because lighter vehicles could shrug off a lot of damage and then just hit you back with some crazy stuff. The APDS L15A3, the shell effect animation has been corrected in the rounds card. Nice. BMP-1, incorrect bulkhead between the fighting and troop compartments has been removed, so that's also gone. There's also some aircraft changes as well. The Javelin, the good old Javas, FAW Mark 9, a bug has been fixed that resulted in the detachment of ailerons with the detaching of stabilizers I mean, fair enough. The Javelin, I would actually say it's not in a terrible place right now. You just got to play it very conservatively. I've been playing the Scimitar recently as well with the 4-aim 9Bs that I've unlocked. I nearly have it spaded. I have about a 2-to-1 with it, very similar to my Javelin stats. And I've enjoyed both vehicles quite a lot. They both have really big weaknesses to them. And playing around those weaknesses is actually really fun to try and do. So I know they're not everybody's cup of tea, but I've been enjoying them. The F8U2 left and right gun groups are now in the same gun group. Ooh. And then also the F9, F2, the Tiny Tim rockets have been added. So the Panther now gets Tiny Tims. I'm not sure if you take them over bombs when it comes to the Panther. The Panthers are in a really rough place and have been for a long time in War Thunder, just because of the stuff that's added around them, and also because they're not dedicated fighters, so they do struggle a little bit. I still have had a great time in them. I do want to spade the Cougar at some point, and I will do at some point in the future. The Jaguar GR1 and also Jaguar A, so the two Jaguars we have, fix fragments from the pylon hanging in the air after a wing has been destroyed. When the keel was detached, the horizontal tail section was not damaged. Then you have the Gazelle, fixed a bug when installing the flares chaff modifications. There might be duplicated ammunition for the 20mm cannon, the GET M621. So now you'll be able to have less ammunition, I believe, while you have the flares and chaff modification, but it is realistic, so that makes the most sense. I still want to get my hands on helicopters at some point, maybe over the next half a year or a year or so. Depends how well we do with the research on aircraft and ground forces. The Ju-188A2, TBF-1C, Avenger Mark II, DV-3B, B-29, the Beaufort Mark 8, and the HAK-2 and HAK-3, the firing angles for the turrets have been specified. So that basically means that all of these vehicles will have different turret angles on their defensive armaments, so you'll have to test them out as you go. Would be nice if they said what they were, but I suppose we could have a look in the files. The S-130F rockets, the weight has been adjusted from 66.6 to 69, so they should have a little bit more weight to them. Don't think it'll make a huge difference to them as long as the explosive mass hasn't been changed. The PARS 3 LR, AGM-65A and AGM-65B air-to-ground missiles, so basically the fire and forget missiles, fixed a bug where it was impossible to acquire and lock on to some AI targets in arcade mode. So now the assault missions should be a bit easier, I believe, at least from that point of view. The fleet also got some changes. So the HMS Liverpool, they fixed a bug due to which torpedoes wouldn't reload in arcade. Rough. Wonder what causes stuff like that. Once again, like I've talked about this many times, I would love to like sit down with a dev and just, I wouldn't even, want to talk about like game design or anything like that, maybe at some point, but I would love to just sit down and just go through like the bug stuff, like what, like straight examples, like what actually caused this to happen, or do you know what caused this to happen might be a better thing to ask. I think that would be quite fun. The HMS Southampton, the thickness of the barbettes on the main caliber turrets above the upper deck have been changed from 24 to 25, so added a millimeter of thickness. And the Type K8 number 13 and also the late variants, they fixed the name for the 76.2 millimeter gun, and the Montgomery and Churchill, they also fixed the name of their 76 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. So that's nice. More information is power when it comes to these things. As always, a lot of stuff in the changelogs the last few days, some positive, some negative. As I said, I don't like the trend to just bet around at higher ranks. I would much rather have a system where, people actually have to aim, but we'll have to see how that goes on and what effect these rounds actually have. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.